So really, really good points about, you were saying, their structured lives, their color-coded nature. And one thing that you mentioned to me as we were debriefing before and preparing is you're seeing some expanding diversity and the types of schools that are involved with the GEBG. Yes. Let's talk about equity.
Yeah.
And equity from an access standpoint, but also some kids have probably less structured lives than the other kids within the other schools. I mean, how are you tackling this whole thing in aggregate?
So I think the research around global competencies is really kind of the foundation. It answers the question, not in my mind, not just of the why, like why are we doing this? Because our students need to grow and develop these skills, these mindsets, these behaviors. But it also answers the question of how, because there are so many different ways that you can get to that goal. So it could be a program in Cambodia. It could also be a virtual exchange and a dialogue that, there are many great resources, many of which are free, many of which support the technology acquisition in underfunded schools or in Title I schools. So it's really about knowing what you're trying to accomplish and work towards that. And I think a lot of the research shows that that some of those skills, students that have less structured lives perhaps have a stronger skill set in things like adaptability. And so I think it is interesting where we're talking about, identifying what we're working towards. How can we help all students, demonstrate the strengths and the learning that they've already accomplished in their education, their formal education, or in just their personal lives, and how do we kind of put that together with what we're trying to do and allow them to grow and continue to develop in those areas.
I commend you and I commend the board because it's like having a bunch of different schools with different value systems and not lumping them all in the same category, not wanting them all to be the same.
Yeah.
They're all different in their own way, but it's like being a mother with a bunch of different kids who have different personalities and trying to address all of them at the same time. So,
and as a nonprofit, we really focused on trying to deliver our mission for all of our member schools and beyond. And I think, we did an exercise at the board meeting last November that was member school profiles of new members in the last year, and just talk, kind of a profile of them, their needs, their budget constraints, their programs that they have, their goals, because every school has a different vision of where they want to go, and that I think helps us to understand this increasing diversity with public schools, with charter schools that are part of our membership, and with increasing international membership beyond North America. So we are in 15 countries. That comes with, different needs. And so it's a really exciting, but also, we have to be, I think, very mission-focused and intentional about trying to understand schools' needs. And I think there is the issue around equity and access around travel programs is ongoing and really important for a lot of schools. One of the things that we do is try to move schools forward towards their own goals. So if a school tells us they want to increase their financial aid budget for their travel programs because that's important to the school, but they just don't know how to do it, we benchmark that data, and we've seen a significant bump in the amount of financial aid that is going towards travel programs for students. And so we can benchmark that and say to a school, use this data and show what the other schools in the network are doing so that you can then hopefully gain more traction in the work that you're trying to do and to increase that budget. And, then we try to provide different financial models for how that might work. But I think it's, looking for those common challenges, like access to expensive international travel programs, that we are, that's one thing where there's been a lot of sharing of resources, sharing of models, and kind of looking at different financial aid structures and budgets mostly within independent schools. But not only, for example, We've had ongoing conversations with some of the public school districts that fund and support through donors, through foundations, their students to travel. A leader in that would be DC Public Schools, where their students travel, and they are fully funded, and they send hundreds of students abroad every year.
Wow.
So I think, it's in terms of kind of connecting and understanding what's happening in the field, partnering, learning from different models. We can sort of provide a range. And one thing I think that we have really been able to do is to provide the, handful of people that are really doing this work at the school level with the sense that they are not alone, that there are lots of people like them and have different ideas and want to learn from them, but also want to help them and give them this idea, this model, this form, this itinerary, this, competency framework. And so that has been the really fun part of GBG. It's also one of the reasons why I was so excited to take on this position, because I would not have been able to build what I built in a school for 8 years without GBG.
The listserv.
Yeah.
The benchmarks, the suggestions from people who've been there.
And I think the community. Because I think a lot of people feel, there's a lot of structural, there's a lot of historic, obstacles to getting this stuff done and doing it really well within a school, and to have the community of other people who also are facing some of those same struggles, but also have found ways or ideas, and you sort of have that common mission and that common passion. And I think, for those of us who have lived and spent time abroad and worked abroad and have multiple identities and nationalities, there is this, there's also this community in the GBG that others understand you. and so I think it's a professional and personal support that this work is meaningful, it is important, and it is actually essential for our students in their future.
It's a heck of a $350 value.
Yes.
One more topic before we close. This has been really, really great, Steph. Your background, you lived in China. Yeah. You've studied in Mauritius, in India. I mean, you've been all over the place. What other than the State Department, CDC, how do you advise schools on breaking into new places? Yeah,
I think it's a really good question. And I would say that one of the things that I learned really quickly is that as an adult, having lived, having traveled, having been to a place is not the same thing at all as taking other people's children there. And I think that there is a level of kind of research and scouting and the decision that you would make. And I'm a mother of 2 kids, and even the decision I would make for my own kid is not the same decision I might make when I'm responsible for other people's kids.
You have to understand that bias.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you have to understand when you are a person that has a really strong connection to a place, that local insight, those friendships, that community understanding, those years of learning and knowledge is hugely valuable, but that in and of itself is not enough. And that understanding kind of the risk management, creating a structure for your school so that you have a documented evaluation and assessment process for every partner that you work with, every place you're going to, and schools have different risk thresholds, and families and communities have different risk thresholds.
They all do.
And I think you have to so you also have to understand your local community, and what motivates them to maybe stretch that risk threshold. And in some places that might be service. In other places it might be, business internships where they would feel like it's worth it to really stretch that risk threshold. And so you have to kind of understand your community and understand your own role and your own judgment and bring others from your school with you into that decision making so that it's not only you making that decision. But otherwise, I think, there's no substitute for being on the ground and scouting a program.
Of course.
I think that...
Site visits.
It really can be difficult for a lot of our schools to do that, especially as even if they know that they should or they want to.
Right.
It can be cost prohibitive. I think that's a great opportunity to work with a partner who has been on the ground, who has the relationships, who has the community and local knowledge. And so that, is something that I would always say. And I will say too that a small investment in a program that you think will run more than one time is worth it for that scouting trip in terms of the overall big picture of sort of liability and risk management. And then the other thing I would say is that in terms of a new program, don't pick the destination, don't pick the place, the partner, pick the student outcomes and the mission.
Mauritius is so beautiful. I mean,
Mauritius is beautiful. Pick the the mission that you want for the program, and pick the goals and objectives and the student outcomes that you want, and design back from there. And obviously, we've seen a lot of evolution in this in language, and I know you guys are active in Martinique. That French teachers have traditionally wanted to go to France, but if real language acquisition is your goal, there are multiple destinations, and that French is a world language, and we've had incredible language experiences for students and our schools reporting on this in Morocco, in Senegal, in Martinique, in lots of places where the teacher is not necessarily raising their hand and saying, this is where I want to go. And so I think it's important that you understand what your objectives are. The other thing I think is we see a lot of schools beginning with really like faculty-driven programs, like I want to go here, so I'm going to present a proposal for a program here, and I think what a lot of schools that are sort of more further along this travel program development timeline are doing are really focusing on even schools that still work with faculty proposals, focusing on the student outcome, focusing on the curriculum connection, and then working together to identify a location and a possible partner to make that happen, to accomplish those goals and move students closer towards those student outcomes. Because, the popularity of the faculty member, the destination should not be driving those kinds of decisions, and that's where we have seen schools sort of run into trouble. And
the culture of that is a lot attributed to the way that some providers in the past have compensated teachers, and that it becomes teacher-driven as opposed to student-driven, which is the opposite of what we want.
Yes.
Okay, so we're about at the end. Claire, we talked about a bunch of great things, curriculum-driven experiences being on the forefront, on top of mind for many of these schools. And I love what you're doing with equity and access and making sure that all schools have the ability to learn about the world and hopefully see it. But if you have to do it virtually, technology has brought us that far.
Yes, and we have a big virtual studio at our conference this year with 4 or 5 really great virtual exchange providers, everything from a full human-size portal to virtual reality focused on climate change. So it's going to be, really trying to push that, there are global experiences that are accessible to every student.
I'm excited for that. And just real quickly, what are some dates for 2020?
So we're looking at April 16th to the 18th in San Diego.
Oh my gosh! I lived in Newport Beach for 3 years. I gotta
and we're really
back.
Grateful to our host at Francis Parker School for that.
I'm looking forward to that one. I'm loving it being in Atlanta, but I'm looking forward to that one. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Trip Leader podcast series. If you have questions about Claire's session, or if you're interested in running global experiences or have questions, just reach out to info@ourhumanfamily.com. And please consider, if you're not already a member of the GEBG, consider becoming a member. It's an amazing organization. Best $350 you'll ever spend. So thank you so much. You guys have a great one.